This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cavill.
Everybody, welcome into the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston, where your first MLB bet gets you 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. Look who we have here. Old stranger, old friend, Mike Giardi. Welcome to those that don't know and haven't heard the news. Mike Giardi is the newest employee of BostonSportsJournal.com. He is going to join the Patriots beat with me and is going to tag team it with me. And of course, this comes after the how do I coin this? Well, I used the word bullshit on Twitter at the time. That Mike Giardi, for no good reason, and certainly not because of the job that he did, because this stuff always goes on at NFL Network. They just churn and burn and don't care. He lost his job at the NFL Network and happened to be on the street. And as soon as that happened, I've been trying to figure out a way to make the math work at BSJ and get him over here, because I just have an enormous amount of respect for Mike and the job that he does and his football knowledge. I don't think people really understand how much football knowledge Mike has. Like, he kind of plays it off because, you know, he's been with Curran, and we all know Curran's this big personality, and you know, you don't want to ruffle his feathers or anything. I'm just kidding, Tom. But you know, Tom was the show at NBC Sports Boston, and then he was at NFL Network. But you know, Mike played in high school, played in college. His dad's one of the legendary high school coaches in Massachusetts history at Falmouth, was the head coach at UMass Boston. So I'm confident in saying that, well, I'm not a big diva like Curran, allegedly. We'll
see, Greg. We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. But I am confident that Mike's going to, in time, look, he's been on TV. He's been one of those pretty boys for a while. You know, one of those fancy boys on TV. He hasn't been down in the dirt with us ink-stained wretches in a while. But, you know, it's going to take him a little time to get his sea legs. But once he does, I know he's going to kill it. And he's really going to show off his football analysis side, which, of course, BSJ specializes in. But anyways, that was a long wind-up. Welcome, Mike. How are things going?
Pretty good, Greg. Really excited. I mean, it's kind of funny, you know, like I said, the deal between us got thrown together quickly, but the conversation started pretty much the moment the news came out with NFL Network. You messaged me, and, you know, periodically we'd message back and forth and like, well, keep me in mind, and and it all happened, and I'm really excited about it. You know, actually, we really progressed when I was on vacation, and I might as well have been, as you said, in Afghanistan. We're having conversations, and the phone is cracking up. But like, just really excited to join BSJ. Been reading you since the beginning. I'm definitely excited to, you know, show off a little bit more of that football muscle, flex a little bit more of that football muscle, and yeah, it'll be fun. There's no restrictions here as far as I can pick up from talking to you. And there may have been a few at my last place of employment. So sometimes I may have wanted to say or write things that I wisely chose not to during that period of time. And I think that I won't have those same concerns here going forward.
Yeah, without question. And, you know, just so people know, like, sort of, you know, exactly how we're going to do things at BSJ is going to be sort of an evolving conversation. I mean, really, just in the past couple of days, you know, we got this done, and it's been a shotgun, you know, marriage, so to speak. But you know, we're just trying to get ready for training camp, and then really it's about the season. I mean, training camp will be all over. We've both covered them before. We'll figure out the rhythm with that. I mean, but you know, in some of the early conversations that Mike and I have, of course, you know, I have my, you know, 10-pole things that I do, my, you know, my film review on Tuesdays, and, you know, get into later in the week. I get into, you know, the opponent and the upcoming matchup, and also sort of my Patriots column on game day, reading where the team is and how it fits in with this opponent. And, you know, Mike's going to do a really good job of, you know, filling the gaps and making it even more comprehensive. He'll be doing a Q&A once a week as well, so you get double us And if you don't like me, and I know there are even some of our members that don't like me, because I put out a member survey at BSJ, and one of the comments that made me laugh was, it was like, what do you like best about BSJ? And they're like, my love-hate relationship with Bedard. So, I mean, and I was like, wait, is that my wife? Did my wife get in here? Mike's gonna, because I tend to focus on the film, like in the immediate aftermath of games. Like, I think Mike's going to be able to like give, some Monday reaction. And look, this is the way with all the writers at BSJ. Like, I don't tell them what to do. I leave it up to them. Like, I might be thinking of writing something and texting Mike, and Mike might say, hey, I'm thinking of writing this, or I want to do this. Like, what do you think? And I'll be like, dude, just go for it. So I think, right now we don't have defined roles, but I think those very quickly will clear up. And the big thing is like, the people are going to get much more comprehensive coverage. And I think that both of us feel like, with our experience, with our knowledge of football, that as far as Patriots coverage goes, I think it's going to be hard to beat. And I think it's going to be, worth everybody's hard-earned money, which, we appreciate. And also I should take a chance to mention that, you podcast listeners out there who, aren't sure about going to BSJ and stuff like that. Now you have a chance to support us, and you get a little bit of a deal, $10 off the annual plan. Go there, use the coupon code BSJ Mike on the annual plan. And, if you don't like it, get out after a year, but we're pretty confident that everything that we're going to bring you is going to be pretty good. And we think you're going to like it.
Greg, I like the idea too. You're talking about sort of filling in the gaps. And for, I don't even know how long, 15 years, I've sort of built up this network, as you do. As you've been national, you've done all these different things, but I've built up this network of scouts and GMs and assistant GMs that I talk to on the regular. I was even talking to them for the 4 months that I was unemployed, because I never planned on leaving. So, I wanted to stay involved as best I could and have those conversations. And the last 5 years, I didn't have a lot of places to put those things, like occasional tweet here or there, but that wasn't part of my role at the NFL Network. But it was something that I did before at NBC Sports Boston, where, they afforded me the space on the web to, hey, this is what I'm hearing about this position, or this is what I'm hearing about this move from these different GMs and scouts, and to be able to bring that back. I'm excited. I'm telling you right now, I have hours worth of conversations and notes written down from the last 4 months about things that the Patriots have done, things that have happened in the division that I haven't been able to put someplace. And now I can put them on BSJ, over the course of the spring and summer. We're summer now, summer and fall. And I'm thrilled for that. And I'm just thrilled to kind of roll up my sleeves and let's get into this. And I think we'll find a great rhythm. And I'm looking forward to kicking some ass.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm excited about that, because Mike, in his role at NFL Network, he's had a lot more regular access to, especially, because it seemed like he covered a lot of the AFC East very intently, or at least the Northeast. And so, he has built up a lot of good contacts there, and that's invaluable stuff that, when I've been solely focused on the Patriots. And, I used to be a national writer, but that's, it's been a while now. And while I still have guys that I talk to, Mike has been there much more recently. And I think he's going to bring a unique perspective with that. I mean, people always love to hear, what do other teams in the AFC East think about the Patriots? Are they scared at all? What do they think about Billy O'Brien being back in, and, things like that. And Mike's going to have the answer to that, where, maybe I have one answer. Mike's going to have about 6. So definitely excited for that. So, all right, enough of that. And make sure you go over to bostonsportsjournal.com and join up. It'll be worth it. Trust me. So Pat's Camp, we are now on the eve of Pat's Camp, and right now in Medway, and Mike's in Millis. A lot of thunder and lightning, so hopefully this podcast goes through. We heard from Bill Belichick today, and I guess the things that stood out to me, Mike, Jack Jones, Bill had a chance to, he didn't have to come out and say much, but, the tone, whatever, he could have sent a message to Jack through the media, by his reaction to the question about Jack Jones. And instead, I thought it was the opposite. I thought he was just like, oh, he'll be out there. Yeah. Nothing happened. The guy hasn't done anything wrong. It's not like he wasn't in trouble constantly in college. It wasn't like he was, in trouble with the team at the end of last season. And it's not like he just got arrested with 2 loaded handguns at Logan Airport. It's just like, oh yeah, whatever. Regular day. He's here. So, I mean, look, I knew Jack Jones was going to be out there, and we'll still have to see if Bill perhaps demotes him for the first few days of camp just to teach him a lesson and put his tail between his legs. But what did you think about Bill's comment on Jack Jones?
Yeah, it's actually one of the answers, because as usual, Bill was not exactly effusive and didn't have a lot of energy. That was one of the answers I thought he had the most energy with, how quickly he answered the question. And look, it leads me to believe that they've done a lot of homework on this situation and they believe Jack's story. So maybe just mindless mistake, a bad one to make, obviously, bringing guns into an airport, but they feel comfortable with how this is all going to shake down. And that, all right, well, the league's monitoring this. Who knows how they're going to react? As we've seen over the course of time, they're not exactly consistent with the way they choose to mete out penalties. But I think their feeling is like, okay, Jack's going to be with us for a better part of the year, if not the entire year. So yeah, he should be out there. And let's, this is the other thing, Greg, they need him. He showed that he could be a good player in this league before he got hurt. And he's also cheap, which is something that they love down there. So good player who's cheap. You find ways to keep that player. Now, if this player was underperforming or more expensive, not a good player at all, he'd have been gone. They would have wasted no time wiping their hands of that. Go ahead, see you later. This is different. They're going to stand by their guy. They need the player, quite frankly. So, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Let me play devil's advocate, because I think I also heard Felger talking about this today, and he said something similar along the lines of, well, they've already obviously done their due diligence, and they don't think this is that big of a deal. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know whether I trust these guys, especially Bill Belichick, to do due diligence. I mean, yes, after Aaron Hernandez, we did hear and take responsibility and talk about how it's going to change how they evaluate people. But I think there's an equal chance that they have their head in the sand and it's just like, well, the legal course is going to run its course, which will probably take about a year at least, right, if it's not kicked before then. And I don't think they want to know. I mean, if you talk to people and they say that Jack Jones and guns, this is not a recent development, that this goes back to college as well. And for a lot of teams and a lot of players, there'd be a lot of concern and perhaps intervention on this. And maybe that's going on. I don't know. But I think, could they have done their due diligence and they don't think it's a big deal? Yeah. But I also think there's an equal chance that they're just skipping over that and just, hoping for the best because he is talented and they need him. And, they can't afford not to have him. So I don't know.
Yeah, Greg, I'm not naive enough to think that doesn't happen in the league. Obviously, we see it all the time. There are, for lack of a better term, there are bad guys in every locker room. There are guys that have all kinds of issues, and the team will go out of their way to protect that player, cover those things up because the player is important to them on the field, and they'll try to do their best to make it work. The one thing I would say about the Patriots, if they are in fact turning a blind eye to this, kind of shame on them, because and Aaron Hernandez was an extreme circumstance here, but you lived through that. And there were some things that happened during that process and the way the team handled it that were not good. They don't want to talk about it. I don't, quite frankly, really want to talk about it anymore. What happened. But I would think based on that, then you got to be a little bit better about it. You should be a little bit smarter about it because you don't want to run down that same path again. And I'm not saying he's going there. I'm just saying we're talking about an escalation. And as you mentioned, a guy who has had a history of some trouble off the field. And a quick little column spoiler for tomorrow morning, I wrote a little bit about Jack Jones. there were teams that took him off his board, right? There were multiple NFL teams that said, no, even though they realized this guy has the potential to be a good NFL player, but there was just too much in the background for them to say, yeah, we want this guy in our room. So Patriots decided they could handle it. And now they've already presented with a couple strikes with him, obviously not just this, but then how last year ended with him being on the team suspended list for, among other things, not wanting to show up on time for his knee rehab.
Yeah, I could just, the one thing I think we can both agree on is that if things don't go well with Jack Jones off the field, I don't want to hear the Patriots crying like that we got duped like they did with Hernandez. Everyone has their eyes open now. Jack Jones had a slip up, at the very least. And, how they react to this will shape this young man's career, not in total part, but in a small part. And, if it's just business as usual and he gets in trouble down the line, like, I don't want to hear any excuses from the team because it's not valid.
No, there should be none. Like you said, either they've cast a blind eye toward, or they did their research and feel good about their research here. But either way, we'll find out proof's going to be in the pudding.
Other comments from Bill. Lawrence Guy reported. I don't think that's any big news. I mean, he held out during minicamp. A lot of guys do that when they're not happy with their contract. We'll have to see whether he has a hold in. My groin's bothering me. Yeah, I can't practice today. That sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, that's possible. Bill didn't say much about DeAndre Hopkins, of course. He did call Aaron Rodgers a great player, but didn't comment much on that. I had a nice little back and forth with Bill about Trent Brown just to get the training camp off on the right foot. And yes. I know he missed me, but at least I did get him to say that Trent Brown's been here for 4 days, which was news, and that he looks good and he's ready to go, along with Juju Smith-Schuster and Tyquan Thornton. Surprisingly, not many questions about Mac Jones. There was one Mac Jones sort of new offense related, but Bill wasn't put in a position to comment on Mac Jones at all. We probably fumbled that a little bit. But anything else from Bill that stood out?
No, I thought it was pretty bland and pretty blah. Like the interesting thing to me, like the Hopkins thing, there's thousands of players in the league and there are hundreds of thousands of whatever they all go through. And, if you don't get them, there's 31 other teams. Well, not that he's going to say they fumbled the bag, but all they had to do was give him a little bit more money and he probably would have been here. They chose not to. Now he's with the Titans and he's, he had his press conference today with the Titans and he's, part of the reason I'm here is because of Derrick Henry. And another part of the reason I'm here is because Tannehill and his wife came to the facility to meet me. And I'm thinking to myself, no, the reason you're there is because they gave you 2 years and $32 million potentially in earnings and more in the first year than the Patriots are willing to do. And look, I still think it was a mistake, and we'll see how it goes. But they could have used that guy on the field, even if he's not what he once was.
But without question, I think we agree on that. One other comment that sort of stuck out to me, and maybe it's just me being me, but he was asked a question. It was the last question at the press conference about because so many new guys are back on defense, can you start at a higher level? And he basically said no, you got to go back for everybody or else you're playing catch up. And I just noticed that he was he named Gonzalez, White, and Mapu and Chris Board, and I'm it just struck me that that's pretty much all they added this year. And along with Juju, that's it.
Yeah. Pretty nondescript offseason. I would say, where you look at we look at the AFC East in particular, and how much did you close the gap on paper? I don't think you really closed it all that much, if at all. So again, they got all four teams have to reestablish themselves and do it on the field. But I think they got some work cut out for them here.
We will get into our early thoughts, sort of camp preview of offense and defense after we tell you about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount and bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. It's all in an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. And I'm telling you, that happens. I did it myself. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay. And we're back. So offense, Mike, let's start with the quarterback. Where do you think he is? Sort of my thoughts. I thought he had a good mini camp and off season. I don't think it was sensational. I don't think it was, 83% completion percentage good or anything like that. I think that said more about the level of competition and, not being in pads and stuff like that. But I think he's in a good place. I do think, for, relative to what they do, I think he has enough around him pending the offensive line, which we'll get into. But I think Mac looked to be in a much better place, at least just on offense. He didn't want to seem to have much to do with Belichick during the offseason practices. We'll see if that changes. Maybe Bill gives him a big hug on the first day just to shut us up, which Bill has done in the past. But I think that Mac Jones, to me, looked like a guy who was super excited to be with a guy like Billy O'Brien. I think that some of the things we saw on the field, you could tell was the bones of the Patriots offense, but with an Alabama spread offense type flair, which is somewhat exciting if the Patriots have the horses to run that sort of thing. But where do you think Mac Jones is going into, year 3 after what happened last year? Where do you think he is mentally? And, I'll ask you, because I'm sure people have heard my thoughts on this. Do you think that there could be a competition with Bailey Zappi at some point?
So I leave that door open for that, Greg, if only because of the way the first 5 weeks of the regular season shake out. There's some really difficult opponents in that opening stretch, I include the Saints in that bunch because Dennis Allen's defenses, they're very good. Obviously, in his rookie year, he struggled against them, although Jonnu Smith didn't help bang a couple balls to Saints defenders. But he always seems to come up with a good plan. So I look at that first 5 games and I say, there is some urgency here for him, not only because he's got to win Bill back, but I think there are some teammates that he has to win back as well, based on how last year went. Then there, of course, is the fan base. We heard the Zappi chants a number of times during the course of last year, which again is a far cry from where we were as a rookie, where people really thought hey, they got the next guy. They found the next guy. He might not be Pat Mahomes, but this is someone that they feel like they can win with. So there is a little bit of, not even a little, there is pressure to perform early. If they lose, but he's playing well or well enough, fine. I think he'll be fine. But if he struggles, the offense struggles, and they're 1-4 after 5 games, it wouldn't surprise me if Bill said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I've seen enough of this kid for the last year and a half, and I'm not doing it." But to the mental side of where Mac's at, I think, and he told us a number of times last year, right? I want to be coached hard. I think at times he was coached hard last year, but he didn't feel like he was coached well. And now with having Bill O'Brien, it's someone he respects. It's someone who, he has a track record. It's someone where there is some shared history, whether we want to make too much out of, or people made too much out of him helping Bill learn the Alabama offense. But I'm just saying in general, they know the same people. They talk to the same people. There is a comfort level there. And I think Mac looks at Bill and says, much like Josh 2 years ago, he has answers to some of the things that I'm going to see that I didn't get last year from the coaching staff, that I didn't get from Joe and I didn't get from Matt. And I'm going to get those from Bill. And I think he's looking forward to that. I think he wants all of it. And I spoiler again for my column tomorrow, but I've had so many people tell me he just put his head down and he grinded all off season. He worked. Like, I'm going to get back. Like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I'm going to get back to the guy that I believe I am, the guy that you thought I was before last year happened. And I think that's great. I love that sort of attitude. Like, even when in the offseason there was the talk about, well, is it going to be a real competition with Zappy heading into OTAs? Is it going to be a real competition? I was told he didn't care. He was totally unfazed by it. Like, bring it. If that's what they want to do it. I'll beat him out. That's how good I feel about myself. And that's how good I feel about the situation now, because I have a real coach that I respect alongside.
Yeah. As far as the passing game goes, in general, like, to me, I think one of the biggest things is Juju Smith-Schuster has to hit the ground running. Like, he wasn't there, like, basically all off season, dealing with the knee. Apparently it's fine now, but like, you know, the Patriots made the decision to move on from Jacoby Myers, basically cheap out a little bit on Jacoby Myers, and which I think was the wrong thing to do. I mean, you know, we'll see. But, you know, Juju, you know, because he's replacing Myers and because it was so easy for the Patriots to bring Myers back, like, Juju has to be as good as Jacoby or better this first year, or else it's a complete bust. And not having that guy, if he's not that type of guy for Mac Jones, it's going to be disastrous for the passing offense. So Juju Smith-Schuster is a guy that I will be watching very closely. I'll be watching how they use the tight ends together. Like, I think Gesicki's just a big slot receiver. He's not really a tight end. He's he makes Travis Kelce look like Gronkowski, the way he plays the position. And Devontae Parker's another guy who has to stay on the field. And the same with Tyquan Thornton. I mean, Mike, I don't know about you, but to me, this whole thing about their passing game is like, in theory, on paper, they have enough to compete if the defense is really good, if the special teams is good. They have enough on offense, but they are counting on a bunch of guys that have not exactly been, durable throughout their careers. And if any of these guys start getting picked off the practice field and stuff like that, the trickle-down effect could be pretty bad.
Yeah, it's massive. And it's, like, I made a comment I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago about, the interest in Denzel Mims. And so you have the Hopkins flirtation, bring him in for a visit. Then there's the reported interest in Mims. And they're two different players, obviously. Mims is a depth guy, and obviously Hopkins would be someone who would ascend to the top of your pecking order immediately. But to me, it sort of speaks volumes about where they are at that position, because they could have used both. That's how I felt about it. If you have Hopkins as the one, and again, even if he's not the same guy, and even if teams over the course of time figure, hey, 6 or 8 games in, like, dude, we don't have to shade coverage that way, or we don't have to alter things for him. Well, if you get that for 6 or 8 games, that's 6 or 8 games that helps your passing game while everyone else develops. I think that's where the Juju thing, he slides in. Now he's the number 2, not the number 1. He's playing the second corner. Kendrick Bourne, so on and so forth. You had advantages there you could take advantage of. Now you don't have that. Now you have Juju. It's clearly going to be someone that they're going to look at and say, well, if we can take that guy out of the game, we worried about Devontae Parker beating us? Are we worried about Kendrick Bourne beating us? And Tyquan, we don't know what Tyquan is yet. I say a million times, I think they have high hopes for him. We saw a couple flashes last year, both in the preseason before he hurt the clavicle, and then a couple times during the regular season. Well, we also saw a guy who was running the wrong routes in week 17. Now, he missed some time, so okay. But, by week 17, shouldn't you have most of this down? Do I have to see you run the wrong route 3 or 4 times when you're running 10 or 11 routes over the course of a game? That's a pretty high percentage. And that's another thing we'll be watching here in camp. Spacing, concepts. Are they making the right decisions out there? Is he advancing? Because he does have something that, they don't have, and that's just pure electric speed. And if he and Parker are sort of double teaming that outside position and you're getting production out of that, then yeah, there's enough here to be competitive. But boy, it's really, really thin. And again, they signed Jalen Hurd, and he's someone who's bounced around the league, but I like coming out of school. Maybe he can be a depth piece, but again, not someone that if you start picking off pieces that you say, oh yeah, we'll be fine. We'll just roll Jalen Hurd in there. Or we'll be fine if you have to bump Kendrick up to a number 1 spot because of injuries. Like, That's not how they're built. They need all those guys to be on the field.
Yeah. I think we pretty much know the issues of the offensive line. I like the interior. I'm anticipating Cole Strange improving. I mean, at times he played well as a rookie. At times he was a rookie, and that's to be expected. So to me, it wasn't an indictment of him as a player or as a first round pick. But he's got to take a step forward this year. He finally has a real offensive line coach. I mean, it didn't really last year. I mean, just Billy Yates is the assistant lines. He was the assistant line coach to Matt Patricia last year, and Yates is okay, but he's not an upper echelon coach now. They have Adrian Clem. Well, they're paying him a lot of money. They should, have a good interior. We all know it's, Trent Brown. It looks like he's in shape. Bill says he's in shape. That's a big thing that's a huge thing. I think it's a huge thing for the whole team that if Trent Brown can go out there and play 17 games of a good left tackle, then you can deal with right tackle. You can figure that out. You can give help no matter, who it is. But let's go into a couple superlatives, so to speak, for the offense. Mike, give me a guy on offense that you think will surprise.
I think Strong has a chance. I just think there's going to be some opportunity for him, and I think they would love for one of the younger backs, Harris or Strong, to sort of emerge. I mean, they flirted again. They had Fournette in. Darrell Henderson was in here as well. As they kind of, are you sure about that position? But I think those guys will get plenty of opportunity here during the preseason, during the summer, and there's a chance for them to shine here a little bit. And look, I know a lot of people are excited to have Ty Montgomery back. He's another guy that he just can't stay on the field. So I can't, it's nice you try to pencil him in as your third down back. I can't. For me, it would be better if Strong was able to be the guy that emerges there as someone because he's younger, he's cheaper, and to this point in his NFL career, very, very small sample size, he's been durable. So that's something I look for and say, I'm curious to see how those guys look after a full offseason in the strength and conditioning program.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good call because I think both, Harris and Pierre Strong, I mean, the door is open for them to walk into. Kevin Harris as the backup to Ramondre Stevenson. Pierre Strong as the third down back. The job is there for them to go and grab it, and they're definitely going to get that opportunity. For me, the name that will surprise, of course, I'll stay on the offensive line. I'll just, I'll stay in character.
I left this right for you. I said, could I go offensive line? No, leave that for Greg. Leave it for Greg.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Jake Matthews, one of their 18 interior offensive linemen that they selected in this draft. From this perspective, Michael Onwenu is on PUP. It'll be, Matthews and Mafi and some other guys, probably Ferentz, and they'll all get opportunities there. But, I think Jake Matthews will get a chance. And here's the thing that, the dominoes that could fall. If Jake Matthews looks good and say they're struggling at right tackle, that perhaps gives them the opening to say, you know what, let's leave Matthews there. Let's put Onwenu at right tackle where he did play well as a rookie. I mean, anytime anything goes wrong with the Patriots offensive line, can we move Onwenu? The Patriots just do not want to do that. They don't want to do it. But in their circumstance, they could. But here's the other thing. Say somebody like Calvin Anderson or Riley Reif does show well at right tackle. They think they're fine. Onwenu goes back to the right guard spot. If Jake Matthews proves himself and they like what they see, I don't rule out the possibility that they would trade David Andrews, sort of like Logan Mankins type deal, if they think the rookie is ready. I mean, I really think center is his best position anyways. But, while I don't think that's going to happen, funnier things have happened with this team. And so I think that's possible. Mike, give me one name that will disappoint on offense.
Devontae Parker got his contract, even though it's sort of a reduction in number, if you will. He looked completely disinterested, all but for one practice at mandatory minicamp, and that just so happened to be right around the time that we started talking about DeAndre Hopkins coming here. He's someone who, if you look at his production, has declined in each of the last 4 years. He's someone that we know had one season where he played 15 of the 16 or 16 of the 17, whatever it was, but he doesn't play full seasons. I think he just he comes and goes. There are moments where you say to yourself, I see why he was a first-round pick 7 years ago. And there are times where you say, well, I see why the Dolphins didn't care about trading him within the division, because there are times he just doesn't look like he wants to play. So good guy by all accounts, fine in that room, liked by his teammates, but I don't get the fascination with Devontae Parker, I guess. If I want to pull a Bob Ryan and JD Drew situation here, I just don't quite get the fascination.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the same position group, and I don't disagree with that. And I'm going to go Kayshon Boutte, the 6th round pick out of LSU. Speaking of a guy that was off a lot of boards, nobody
at LSU, Greg, was unhappy that he left. They were, see you later. Thanks for everything or nothing. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Look, do I think the kid has talent? Yeah. I mean, look at his freshman tape. It was unbelievable. But from that point on, he was not anything close to being a professional. I don't know why anybody thinks he's going to be now. There's a reason why he was returning to LSU and then suddenly he wasn't. I don't think he worked out well before the draft, which still caused him to go he was sort of late round priority free agent type of guy. I guess there was a viral video for a short time of, Bill O'Brien, chewing him out during one of the OTA practices. And I have a hard time seeing that guy doing the things necessary to stay on the field and to pop. I mean, he is definitely like a prime sort of practice squad guy where you're like, look, we're going to give you a chance, prove yourself every day, day in, day out, 365 for a couple of years, and then maybe we'll talk. But I think the Patriots fans who look at his freshman year tape and think that guy's going to be out there this year for this team, I'm sorry, it's a pipe dream. I think DeMario, is it Douglas, who is the wide receiver that they drafted? I think that guy has a much better chance of making an impact on this team than Boutte does.
Well, and it's interesting too, because if you go from the OTAs and mandatory minicamp, Cunningham / quarterback, now receiver, you saw some signs of life there. He's another sort of intriguing guy that actually, when I sort of throw them all together, I'm curious to see about Cunningham's development. They've had some success with players like that. Obviously, Julian Edelman is one of them, but they've had some players that they've sort of altered positions or messed around with for a little bit and gotten some production out of. And he's a terrific athlete. He's a confident kid. Making a switch to wide receiver, it's not going to be easy, but he's someone that I could see back half of the year after some time on the practice squad. You need a roster spot. Maybe he can come up and give you a little something. I think he's someone I'm gonna sort of enjoy watching here during training camp and see if he can make any headway in that wide receiver room.
On defense, to me, we'll go through the 3 units real quick, but for me, the guys that I think this team, they need to pop, Christian Barmore, number 1, because he's immensely talented. And even when he finally got out there last year, he did a really good job. Keon White, it would be nice to see him show why he's a 2nd round pick. And, because right now it looks like he's not going to get much time, but that's where training camp is to change people's minds and preseason games. And, if he pops, maybe all of a sudden Dietrich Wise is now a veteran backup type of thing. I mean, I think we know what we're going to get out of Judon. Uche, I expect to do the same thing. He's in a contract year. I don't think anybody else is really, Gotchow's the same thing. We know what we're going to get. I don't really think they have much talent, elsewhere in that group. Linebackers sort of the same, depending on, how the safeties come out. And is Mapu more of a linebacker or is he more of a safety? And, we'll have to see on that. And, in the secondary, all eyes on who's going to replace Devin McCourty, somebody's got to be the guy when it's 3rd and 10 against Josh Allen that's in the middle of the field. I mean, they could talk about disguising and they don't know who's going to be where and all that stuff, but that's a bunch of bull crap. When you're facing, you could talk about all that stuff all you want, but when you're staring down the barrel of Josh Allen, somebody better be back there doing the job, or else you're going to be giving up 60-yard touchdowns. And, I guess, Jalen Mills, I don't think Adrian Phillips was fast enough for that, even though he has the head for it. But, those are the things. And of course, Christian Gonzalez, the number one pick. Is he going to look the part? Is he going to look the part when they put pads on? Because the physical nature of the position is what a lot of people have questions on. To me, those are the big things for me on defense. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm really curious about the McCourty thing. Someone asked me the other day, like, did they do enough to replace Devin? I'm like, no. And even if they had tried to replace Devin, I'm not sure that you could replace Devin just because of the institutional knowledge that he had, the trust that they had in him. Like, I mean, we're not just talking about setting up the secondary. At times, he's setting up the entire defense. So you're losing so much brain power there. And even though he wasn't what he once was, if you noticed, not a lot of times that people get behind him in the secondary. Like, he played his angles well. He was able to cover up for maybe that half a step that he lost. So again, maybe not the same player, but if he'd come back, I think they would have been happy. And I think I would have been like, all right, well, like, he's not what he was, but he's still plenty good enough to get them where they need to be. And I think you saw that for a better part of last year. So I don't, it's probably not going to be one guy. It's probably going to be, could it be Bledsoe if he has a good week of practice? Could it be, is it Mills? Is it, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's a bit of a revolving door early in the season. I mean, I think they'll eventually have to settle on someone. I'm just not sure who that someone is. I didn't hate the idea of maybe moving John Jones back there. But again, when you start to look at the corner depth and whether Jack Jones, again, we don't know how that's totally going to play out. Is Gonzalez ready to go from jump? That's important. I think he needs to be. I think he needs to be, whether it's right away or pretty close to right away. I think they need that guy because I think it just, if you're basing it on the skill set that he brings to the table, and all of a sudden he's on one side, Jack's on the other, and you can move John or have Marcus Jones on the inside, like, that makes your corner room, at least in terms of that front line, pretty good. So I think they need that. And I'm just curious how that plays. I think the other thing, we haven't really talked about him, and we were talking about him a lot at the end of last year, is Marcus Jones. Where does he fit? He still sees himself as a corner. I think we saw last year he can be pretty dynamic with the ball in his hands, which sort of goes back to what he did at Houston as well. Well, he took that to the National Football League, and the few times that he got a chance to touch it, he did well with it. I think that maybe if you're comfortable with Gonzalez, Jack Jones, and John Jones as your three DBs, as your three corners, maybe that gives Marcus a chance to get a little more offensive time and more play time. I'm really curious to see how that goes here during the summer. I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to show us a lot, but I bet you they have an idea of what they want to do with Marcus, and I'm just not sure what that is yet. But he's someone that I think he's really talented, and I'm just curious if they can maximize that talent in whatever role it may be.
Defensive surprise guy for me, I'm going to go with, not that this is going to be a surprise, but somebody who, impresses. I think Jabril Peppers, he got off to a slow start, with training camp, coming back from the knee injury. And I think it was Cleveland to, he was pretty good by the end of the season. I thought he looked really good in OTAs, and I think Mapu and Jabril Peppers are sort of X factor guys for this defense that they can do a lot of things with, and it's just that Peppers is a little smaller than Mapu. I mean, I could name Mapu here because I was just so blown away by him, and that they gave him all that they did in the offseason practices to tackle the different positions and stuff like that. You never, ever, ever see that with a defensive rookie on the Patriots, and that they felt comfortable enough to do that tells me, they have big plans for him. Who's a surprise for you, Mike?
Yeah, I think that, and I guess we talked about him so much. Is Mapu a surprise now based on all the conversations we've had about him since we saw him in OTAs and how they utilized him? I was thinking about, as you were saying, like, we haven't seen anybody get that much as a rookie, like the different positions. And it's true. I can't think of anybody that I'm like, oh my God, they're here and there. But I do remember J.C. Jackson's first year. And it was beginning of training camp. It was late OTAs and then beginning of training camp. And he was out there with the ones. And you're like, this guy. And then Jason McCourty was sidelined a little bit. So there was some, I think we were even talking at the time, like, would they cut Jason McCourty after they traded him? Obviously ended up being here for 3 years. But that's the last guy I can think of that, like, was almost right away sort of force-fed into a position. And you're like, okay, clearly they have bigger ideas for this player than any of us thought at the time. And I mean, they pretty much declared that they have bigger plans for Mapu from jump this spring. So I'm curious as to where they line him up. Do they give him multiple spots, or do they, after looking at what they saw in the spring, do they say, hey, we're gonna play a linebacker or whatever, pick a spot, let's do that, and then maybe as the year goes on, we start to give you more responsibility. But you're right that it's very rare for them to do what they did with a player like him, a young player like him in the spring.
Guy who I think is going to disappoint is Jalen Mills. I just think that, like, not that I'm down on the player, even though I'm not extremely high on the player, but I just think the position that he's in, like, there's not really a spot for him at cornerback anymore with Gonzalez and Jay Jones and Jack Jones and Marcus Jones. So he's not really wanted there. And then, back to safety, he has done some of that, but, like, I don't know. It just seems like to me it could be a situation where he gets a little bit lost in the weeds. And I think, it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking like early in the season, like how much of a fumble, like we missed it. Like we didn't talk about it enough about, the whole replacing Devin thing, especially in the passing game. Like I don't care about the running game. I don't care along the line of scrimmage. I mean, they have enough of those guys and they do fine, but I'm talking about like, 3rd and 10 against Josh Allen, against Joe Burrow, against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, guys that they're going to play, Jalen Hurts in the first game, Tua, like, they better be solid in the back end against a lot of the teams on their schedule, especially the first 8 games, or like, it could get embarrassing. So, what they do with Mills, they gotta bring him along well. If he's going to be the guy, which it seems like he will be the guy, he has the most traits to do that. Again, Devin was a cornerback turned safety, because Devin couldn't play man-to-man, so they moved him to safety. Mills is sort of the same thing, not a great man corner, more of a zone corner. Maybe that translates to free safety, but I have a feeling like I don't think they've invested enough time into that, and I think it's going to show, and he's going to struggle. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think if we're having this conversation 6 to 8 weeks from now, we should 12 weeks from now, we should bop this podcast back out there, because I think you and I both have reservations about how they attack that position. And Mills is a great choice here because, not to just agree, but I do. I think I didn't like him when he came over, and the idea was he was going to play corner. I was like, he doesn't run well enough to play corner, and he did fine. Like you said, he wasn't this huge a liability out there, but also like, yeah, you didn't want to play a ton of man with him because that's not what he does well. We remember the CD Lamb crossing pattern against Dallas in Mac's rookie year a couple years ago. Mills trailing, just like can't even stay on the field with him. But now I wonder, okay, you're going to play center field. Do you have the range to be able to go from corner to corner and make the sorts of plays that Devin did, or prevent the sort of plays? Maybe he didn't make a ton of plays, but prevent some of the plays that Devin did. And I don't think he runs as well as Devin did even last year when Devin wasn't running as well as he did. So I think that's someone that absolutely will watch. And there's that whole chess game too. Like if you think about some of the Patriots' best plans, what they did to Mahomes a couple times, especially the first half of the AFC Championship game when that team was rolling and they didn't score a touchdown in the first half. Who was central in all that? It was Devin. Like maybe again, not making all the plays, but the guy that was helping to disguise, the guy who was helping to line it up, the guy that was providing support over the top on guys like Tyreek Hill. It was Devin. Bill likes to put a lot of faith and responsibility in safeties. I'm curious as to whether or not Jalen can handle all that.
That's a great point by you, because I think one of the underrated great talents of Devin McCourty that doesn't, really get talked about except by, football people is his ability to line up in one place, say like, showing, cover 2 shell and being sort of like a wide safety. And then all of a sudden sprinting back and being, the top of cover 3 and the single high safety and those sort of things early on in his career when they had other options as safety, his ability to play robber, like his ability to quickly go from one place to another at the speed of an NFL game, to me was wholly underrated. And I don't think they have anybody on their roster that can do that right now. And so that's going to hurt their disguise. So
think about what they did against the Rams in the Super Bowl, right? And it was Jared Goff, and they were supremely confident about what they could do to Goff. But like the amount of disguise that they presented in that game, like Goff, if they had Mike Goff in that game, I think he might have said, I'm seeing ghosts as well. We had the famous Sam Darnold one, but I think Goff saw some things that he didn't expect to see in that game as well.
Yeah, great point. All right, Mike, we get going tomorrow. It's no turning back now. You're locked in. I'm not letting you go. You can't get out until at least mid-February, so you better be ready.
I'm ready. Let's do this thing. Hey, and do we quickly want to mention Crazy Day in Boston sports? Because you and I
right.
Jaylen Brown with the richest contract in NBA history, which is he worth it? No, but is that what they get paid now? Yes, someone will exceed that in whatever in the next 6 months' time. And then of course Bergeron, which is the one that I think really hits home for a lot of people. Just a tremendous Bruin. Maybe not the greatest Bruin, but in the conversation, in the top 5 or so, and just someone who you could consistently trust for almost 2 decades now. That's a massive hole in their lineup. Even if, again, he wasn't the same player that he was, he's still pretty damn good.
And it's just what was funny about the Jaylen Brown contract is just, the thing that, from covering the NFL where, these guys literally put their lives on the line and they're scraping together Lawrence Guy, that's part of his contract issue is do I really want to beat myself up for $4.5 million? And here's Jaylen Brown, who, look, he's a good player. He's not a great player. And he's going to be making something like $60 million a year. That's almost double what good quarterbacks get in the National Football League, which is a much harder position. It's just, that blows me away. And, Bergeron, to me, I'm a huge Bruins fan. My son plays hockey, so we watch all the games almost as a family. We watch all the games, and as my son came up in sort of the hockey ranks, I took great pleasure in pointing out Patrice Bergeron to him, and saying when we would go to occasional practice at Warrior Ice Arena and stuff like that, and I would just tell him watch that guy. And, listen to what he says in press conferences and how he talks and look at what he does in the community and, any sort of behind the bee thing or whatever on Patrice Bergeron, we would watch because I wanted to show my kids and both kids, my daughter too, because she's an athlete, and we'd all sit down and trust me, from covering professional athletes in a wide array of sports, you learn very quickly, what you believe a guy to be and to stand for just isn't true. It's just sort of the facade. And, you don't want to speak too highly about people, but Patrice Bergeron was one of those rare guys who just did everything the right way. He was complete and total class. And I'm going to miss watching him, play every single night and wearing that C and that's the thing that stands out for me is just he ran the program for, at least the last decade here. I mean, Chara was the captain and that's nice and all, but I'm sorry, it was Bergeron. Everybody followed Bergeron's lead and that's invaluable to an organization. And I just wanted to say, thanks as a fan and, thanks for being a great example to kids in this area because those are few and far between. They really are.
Yeah, you and I were texting about it, and I wrote a column for us, and you're like, do you have a behind the scenes, something happened in 2011? And I was racking my brain trying to think of something, and you know what? I couldn't come up with something. I could tell you a million different stories that happened during that run for almost every player on the team, and I'll remember the between games 1 and 2 in Montreal, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, right? They went to Lake Placid because they had an extra day and they wanted to get out of Montreal. They didn't want any fire alarms pulled. They wanted to go to Lake Placid, sort of prepare as a team and, a little team bonding. And I have stories about every guy from the time that we were in Lake Placid. It was 24 hours and I saw this guy here and I did this. And we gave Tim Thomas a ride and he was making fun of Claude Julien and there was all these different things. And then I'm thinking to myself, we're out at the bar at the end of the night and there's a bunch of Bruins there, and there's one Bruin player hitting on a Lake Placid girl, and there's all these different things that are happening. No, it wasn't there. Patrice wasn't there, and he was at the team dinner because we just happened to be eating, not too many places to eat in Lake Placid. We happened to be eating in the same place. So he was with the group, but then most of the group went out. Patrice wasn't there. And I actually kind of think, like, now that I'm thinking about it, like, that's sort of like he was just a classy dude. Not that these guys aren't classy dudes, but like, I'm about business. We're going to, I'm a team. We're going to have dinner. And then I'm going to go get my treatment and rest and be ready for practice tomorrow. And you guys do what you do to whatever, blow off steam. I'm going to be back at the hotel room. And that's that. And he's just a classic, a guy who got the absolute utmost out of his own ability, improved a lot over the course of time, embraced a bunch of different things from different coaches. And I think if you could clone him, I think every sport would clone. They'd want a guy like that on their team. You're not the singularly the most talented guy, but the one who always gave you everything he had and generally gave you positive play every single night.
Well said, Mike. And I will see you tomorrow. And hopefully we see everybody listening to us over at BSJ. And Mike will have a Q&A later this week. Oh, shoot. That reminds me. I have to get back to mine because I got interrupted we had a little snafu with the website today. So I have to do that as soon as we're done here. But Mike will do a Q&A later in the week. But hopefully you guys come, join up, devour our coverage because you're not going to want to miss it.